When Admiral Marcus Hawk Richardson witnessed a single shot pierce through three enemy combatants at an impossible distance, he thought his spotting scope was malfunctioning. What he discovered next would challenge everything the Navy's most decorated sniper instructor believed about the limits of human marksmanship, and reveal a story that had been buried in classified files for over a decade. The morning mist hung low over the training grounds at Naval Amphibious Base Coronado as Admiral Marcus Richardson adjusted his spotting scope for the third time. Something was wrong with the equipment. He was certain of it, through 27 years of military service, including tours in Afghanistan, Iraq, and classified operations across 3 continents. Richardson had never seen anything like what his scope was showing him. The shot had come from the 800-meter mark, a distance that pushed the absolute limits of even the most advanced sniper rifles. At that range, wind drift, bullet drop, and atmospheric conditions created variables that made precision shooting nearly impossible. Yet his scope clearly showed 3 targets down with a single projectile path. Richardson lowered the scope and rubbed his weathered eyes. The California sun was beginning to burn through the marine layer, casting long shadows across the expansive training facility. Around him, a dozen SEAL instructors and trainees had gone silent, their usual banter replaced by confused murmurs and the occasional whispered curse. "Sir, did you see that shot?" Petty Officer Jenkins approached cautiously, his own spotting equipment still trained downrange. Jenkins had been working these training grounds for 8 years, had witnessed some of the most skilled marksmen in the world hone their craft, but his voice carried a note of disbelief that Richardson recognized all too well. "I saw something," Richardson replied, his tone measured. "Question is, what exactly did we see?" The Admiral raised his scope again, scanning the target area methodically. The 3 silhouettes remained motionless at the 800-meter line, positioned in a tactical formation that simulated a real-world scenario. Standard protocol for advanced sniper training required multiple shots to neutralize multiple targets at such extreme range. What they had just witnessed defied not only standard operating procedure but the basic physics of ballistics. Behind them, the sound of approaching footsteps on gravel announced the arrival of Captain Sarah Chen, the base's operations commander. Chen had requested this demonstration personally, though she had been deliberately vague about its purpose. Richardson had assumed it was another routine evaluation of new equipment or ammunition.
Now he was beginning to suspect there was more to this exercise than anyone had told him. "Admiral, what's your assessment?" Chen's voice carried the crisp authority of someone accustomed to command. But Richardson detected an underlying tension.
"Captain, I need to see the shooter," Richardson said, not lowering his scope. "And I need to understand what kind of weapon system just accomplished what should be mathematically impossible." Chen exchanged a glance with Jenkins before responding. "The shooter is already en route to the observation post, sir. As for the weapon system, it's standard issue. M11-0A1 with match-grade ammunition." Richardson finally lowered his scope and turned to face Chen directly. The M11-0A1 was an excellent semi-automatic sniper rifle, but its effective range topped out around 800 meters for precision work. Achieving a kill shot at 2,800 meters required specialized long-range systems, custom ammunition, and environmental conditions that bordered on perfect. "Captain, with all due respect, that's not possible. The ballistic coefficient, wind drift calculations, and sight adjustments alone would make that shot a 1 in 1,000 chance, even with perfect conditions. And we're not dealing with perfect conditions today." As if to emphasize his point, a gust of wind swept across the training ground, strong enough to shift the mist and require any sniper to recalculate their shot significantly. Richardson had seen world-class snipers miss targets at half that distance in similar conditions. The sound of an approaching vehicle drew their attention to a dust trail making its way up the access road. The vehicle was a standard military transport, but Richardson noticed that it was flying a flag he didn't recognize. Not the usual base insignia, but something with additional markings that suggested a higher level of classification. "Sir, before the vehicle arrives, there's something you should know," Chen said, her voice dropping to a tone that Richardson had learned to associate with sensitive information. This demonstration was requested specifically by personnel from the Defense Intelligence Agency. "The shooter we're about to meet has a background that's been classified above most clearance levels." Richardson felt the familiar tingle of anticipation that came with encountering something beyond his considerable experience. Throughout his career, he had worked with special operations personnel from every branch of the military, had trained with international allies, and had been briefed on weapon systems that wouldn't see public acknowledgement for decades. Yet Chen's tone suggested this was something different entirely. The transport vehicle came to a stop 50 meters away, and Richardson watched as a single figure emerged from the passenger side.
Even at distance, he could see that the person moved with the fluid precision that marked elite military training. As they approached, Richardson realized with surprise that the shooter was a woman, probably in her early 30s, wearing standard BDUs with no visible rank insignia. "Admiral Richardson," Chen said formally, "I'd like you to meet Sarah Reeves." The woman who approached carried herself with the quiet confidence that Richardson had observed in only the most elite operators. She was of medium height with auburn hair pulled back in a regulation bun, but it was her eyes that caught his attention. They held the steady, almost analytical gaze that he had seen in snipers who had spent years calculating angles, distances, and variables that meant the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure.
"Admiral," Reeves said, extending her hand with a firm grip. "I understand you have some questions about the demonstration, Mr.
Reeves," Richardson replied, studying her face for any indication of her background. "I have several questions, starting with how you managed to achieve a 3-target kill at 2,800 meters with a weapon that shouldn't be capable of that kind of precision at that range." Reeves glanced at Chen, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. "Sir, the weapon is capable of much more than most people realize when operated under specific conditions and with proper technique modification. What you witnessed today was the result of applying unconventional ballistic calculations and compensating for variables that aren't typically considered in standard training."
Richardson had heard similar explanations before when new technologies or techniques were being introduced, but something in Reeves's tone suggested this was more than just advanced training or equipment modification.
"Reeves, I've been training snipers for 15 years. I've worked with every advanced system the military has developed, and I've seen calculations that require supercomputers to process. What you're describing sounds like you're compensating for variables that would require real-time atmospheric data, wind measurements at multiple altitudes, and ballistic calculations that would take a team of analysts to process." "Yes, sir. That's correct," Reeves replied simply.
The casual nature of her response sent a chill through Richardson. The implications of what she was suggesting were staggering.
Real-time compensation for those kinds of variables would require either computational assistance that didn't exist in portable form, or an intuitive understanding of ballistics that went beyond anything he had encountered in his career. "Captain Chen," Richardson said, turning to the operations commander, "I think I need a fuller briefing on what we're dealing with here."
"Admiral, with your permission, I'd like to demonstrate something else. Something that might help clarify the situation."
Richardson looked between the two women, recognizing that he was being drawn into something that went far beyond a routine training demonstration. "What kind of demonstration?" "I'd like to show you the shot analysis from today's exercise, and then I'd like to show you documentation of similar shots that have been achieved under combat conditions."
"Combat conditions?" Richardson's voice sharpened.
"Ms. Reeves, are you telling me that the shot I just witnessed has been replicated in actual operational environments?" "Yes, sir, multiple times, including one engagement that resulted in preventing a terrorist attack that would have killed over 300 civilians."
Richardson felt the ground shift beneath his understanding of what was possible. Throughout his career, he had prided himself on staying current with every advancement in military technology and technique.
He had been briefed on classified programs, had worked with experimental weapons systems, and had trained personnel who went on to perform extraordinary feats in combat. But what Reeves was describing suggested a level of capability that would revolutionize modern warfare.
"Captain Chen, I'm going to need to see all available documentation on this program, and I'm going to need a complete background briefing on Miss Reeves's training and operational history." Chen nodded slowly. "Sir, that can be arranged, but the briefing will need to take place in a secured facility, and you'll need to sign additional security agreements."
The program that developed these capabilities has been classified at levels that require special handling. Richardson looked back toward the target area where the evidence of the impossible shot still lay.
In the distance, he could see range personnel beginning to move toward the targets for verification and documentation. Standard procedure would require detailed analysis of the projectile impact, measurement of the shooting position, and environmental data recording.
"How long has this program been operational?" he asked. "The specific techniques that Ms. Reeves demonstrated today have been under development for 8 years, Chen replied. But the operational applications began 3 years ago with a small test unit. And the success rate? In controlled conditions like today's demonstration, approaching 90%. In combat conditions, approximately 70% effectiveness for extreme range precision shots." Richardson absorbed this information with growing amazement and concern. A 70% success rate for extreme range precision shooting in combat would represent a tactical advantage of enormous proportions. It would allow single operators to influence battlefield conditions from distances that made detection and counterattack nearly impossible.
As well. Reeves, how many operators have been trained in these techniques? Currently, sir, there are 12 operators certified for this level of precision shooting. I've been involved in training 7 of them personally. And your own background? Where did you develop these capabilities? Reeves looked at Chen again, who gave another slight nod. Sir, my background includes conventional sniper training through the Army's Advanced Marksmanship Program, followed by specialized training through a joint program involving multiple agencies. The specific techniques I use are based on research that began in the private sector but was adapted for military applications.
Richardson realized that he was hearing only the surface details of what was clearly a complex and highly classified program. The reference to private sector research suggested corporate or academic involvement, while the multiple agencies indicated a level of inter-service cooperation that was typically reserved for the most sensitive projects. Captain Chen, I want to schedule a complete briefing for tomorrow morning. I also want to review the operational history of this program and understand its current deployment status.
Sir, that briefing is already arranged. There are also additional personnel who will be joining us, including representatives from the agencies involved in the program's development. As Richardson processed this information, he noticed that additional vehicles were approaching from different directions. The morning training exercise that had begun with a routine sniper demonstration was clearly evolving into something much more significant.
Miss Reeves, one more question for now. The shot you demonstrated today, was that representative of your typical performance, or were we witnessing an exceptional demonstration? Reeves considered the question carefully before answering.
Sir, today's conditions were actually more challenging than optimal. Wind patterns, humidity, and atmospheric pressure were all working against precision shooting.
Under ideal conditions, the techniques I demonstrated could be effective at significantly greater ranges. Richardson felt a moment of vertigo as he contemplated the implications.
If Reeves could achieve 3 target kills at 2,800 meters under suboptimal conditions, the theoretical maximum range for her techniques could extend to distances that would make traditional counter-sniper tactics completely inadequate. Significantly greater ranges, he asked.
Yes, sir. The record for precision shooting using these techniques is currently 4,200 meters.
Richardson stared at Reeves, searching her face for any indication that she was exaggerating or testing his credulity. Her expression remained steady and matter-of-fact, as if she were discussing routine training statistics rather than capabilities that would redefine the possibilities of individual soldier effectiveness.
4,200 meters, he repeated slowly.
Yes, sir.
That engagement took place in Afghanistan 18 months ago. Single shot, moving target, successful mission completion with 0 friendly casualties.
The weight of what Richardson was learning began to settle over him. He was looking at either the most significant advancement in individual soldier capability in decades, or he was being exposed to a program that operated so far outside conventional understanding that its implications were almost impossible to process.
Captain Chen, I think we need to expedite that briefing. The secure briefing room at Naval Base Coronado felt different from any military facility Richardson had experienced in his 27 years of service.
Located 3 levels underground, the space was equipped with technology he didn't recognize and secured with protocols that required him to surrender not just his phone and electronics but also his watch and any metal objects that might contain recording devices. The morning after witnessing Sarah Reeves' impossible shot, Richardson found himself seated at a polished conference table across from individuals whose credentials stretched the boundaries of his security clearance.
Captain Chen sat to his left, but the others in the room represented agencies and programs that existed in the shadowy intersections between military service, intelligence gathering, and scientific research.
Dr. Elizabeth Harper, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and intense brown eyes, served as the primary briefing officer. Her background, as outlined in the materials Richardson had been given to review, included advanced degrees in physics and neuroscience, along with consulting roles for programs that weren't named in any documentation he could access. Admiral Richardson, Dr. Harper began, her voice carrying the measured tone of someone accustomed to presenting complex information to military leadership. What you witnessed yesterday represents the culmination of 8 years of research into the intersection of human cognitive enhancement and advanced ballistics. Richardson leaned forward, his attention focused completely on Harper's words.
The phrase cognitive enhancement carried implications that made him immediately wary. Throughout his career, he had been briefed on programs that pushed the boundaries of human performance, but cognitive enhancement suggested modifications that went beyond training and conditioning.
Doctor, when you say cognitive enhancement, what exactly are we discussing?
Admiral,
The human brain's capacity for rapid calculation, pattern recognition, and sensory processing far exceeds what most people access through conventional training. What we've discovered is that specific individuals, under certain conditions, can access computational abilities that allow them to perform ballistic calculations in real time that would normally require computer assistance.
Harper activated a wall-mounted display that showed brain imaging data Richardson didn't recognize. The scans revealed areas of neural activity highlighted in different colors, with data streams showing electrical patterns that seemed to pulse and flow in complex rhythms.
These are neural imaging results from Miss Reeves during live fire exercises. What you're seeing is her brain processing environmental variables, ballistic data, and target information simultaneously at a rate that exceeds normal human cognitive function by approximately 400%. Richardson studied the display, trying to process what he was seeing.
The implications were staggering. Are you telling me that Sarah Reeves has been genetically or surgically modified?
No, sir. Harper replied quickly.
What we're dealing with is the activation of latent human capabilities through specific training protocols and environmental conditioning. Miss
Reeves was born with certain neurological predispositions, but the abilities she demonstrated yesterday were developed through techniques that could theoretically be applied to other individuals with similar baseline characteristics. Colonel James Morrison, a man Richardson recognized from Joint Operations Command, spoke up from across the table.
Admiral, before we continue, I want to emphasize that everything you're about to hear has been verified through 3 years of operational testing. The capabilities Dr.
Harper is describing have been proven in combat environments against enemy forces. Richardson nodded, but his mind was racing through the ethical and tactical implications. Colonel, how many people are aware of this program? Including yourself, sir. Fewer than 50 people worldwide have complete knowledge of the scope and capabilities we're discussing today. The operational teams consist of 12 individuals, all of whom have been extensively vetted and monitored throughout their service. Dr. Harper continued her briefing, bringing up additional displays that showed ballistic trajectory data unlike anything Richardson had seen in conventional sniper training.
Admiral, traditional long-range shooting requires calculations that account for wind speed and direction, atmospheric pressure, temperature, humidity, and the Coriolis effect. At extreme ranges, these calculations become so complex that even experienced snipers must rely on computer-assisted systems.
I'm familiar with the ballistic challenges, Doctor. What makes our operatives different is their ability to process these variables intuitively.
They're not performing mathematical calculations in the traditional sense. Instead, their enhanced pattern recognition allows them to perceive the relationship between environmental factors and projectile behavior in ways that bypass conscious calculation.
Richardson felt a chill as he began to understand the scope of what was being described. Are you saying they can see the bullet's path before they fire? In a sense, yes.
Their brains create predictive models based on sensory input that most people can't consciously access. They can perceive wind currents at multiple altitudes, sense atmospheric pressure variations, and intuitively adjust for factors that would require instrumental measurement for other shooters.
Captain Chen activated another display that showed operational footage from Afghanistan. The video quality was high definition, shot from multiple angles with timestamp data indicating it had been recorded 18 months earlier.
Richardson could see a mountainous landscape with a small valley below, where several structures were visible among scattered vegetation. This is the engagement Ms. Reeves mentioned yesterday, Chen explained. Intelligence indicated that a high-value target was coordinating an attack on a civilian convoy traveling through this valley. Traditional air support wasn't available due to weather conditions, and ground forces couldn't reach the location in time to prevent the attack.
The footage showed a shooting position on a ridgeline that appeared to be at an impossible distance from the target area. Richardson could see a figure in camouflage gear making minute adjustments to a rifle scope, but the target area was barely visible even with the high-definition recording equipment.
The distance from the shooting position to the target was 4,200 meters, Morrison added. Weather conditions included variable wind speeds up to 30 knots with atmospheric pressure fluctuations due to an approaching storm system. Richardson watched as the footage showed the moment of the shot. Even with high-speed cameras, the projectile wasn't visible, but the impact in the target area was clear. A figure that had been moving between buildings suddenly dropped, and the video showed other individuals in the area immediately seeking cover. Single shot, confirmed kill, and the attack on the civilian convoy was prevented, Chen concluded. Total engagement time from target identification to mission completion was 7 minutes. Dr. Harper brought up additional data showing the ballistic analysis of the shot.
Admiral, the computational requirements for this engagement would have required a team of analysts with advanced computer modeling, real-time atmospheric data, and multiple attempts to achieve accuracy. Ms.
Reeves accomplished it intuitively, in real time, under combat stress.
Richardson sat back in his chair, trying to absorb the magnitude of what he was being shown.
Doctor, you mentioned that 12 operatives have these capabilities. How are they identified and recruited? The identification process involves extensive neurological testing, psychological evaluation, and baseline capability assessment.
We're looking for individuals who show specific patterns of brain activity, particularly in areas related to spatial reasoning, pattern recognition, and sensory processing. Colonel Morrison leaned forward. Admiral, the individuals in this program represent less than 0.1% of the population. The neurological characteristics we're looking for are extremely rare, and even individuals who possess them require months of specialized training to develop operational capabilities.
What kind of training? Dr. Harper activated another display showing training facility layouts that looked unlike any military installation Richardson had seen.
The conditioning process involves sensory enhancement protocols, cognitive exercises designed to increase pattern recognition speed, and ballistics training that progressively increases in complexity and range. The training takes place in facilities that can simulate a wide range of environmental conditions. Chen added. Temperature, humidity, atmospheric pressure, and wind patterns can all be controlled and modified to provide increasingly challenging scenarios. Richardson studied the facility layouts, noting advanced technology and environmental control systems that represented significant investment and sophistication.
How long does the training process take?
From initial recruitment to operational capability, approximately 18 months, Morrison replied. But the individuals continue to develop their abilities throughout their service. Miss Reeves, for example, has been with the program for 3 years, and her capabilities continue to expand. Expand how? Dr. Harper brought up performance data showing improvement curves that seem to accelerate rather than plateau over time. Traditional training shows improvement that levels off as individuals reach their physical and cognitive limits. Our operatives show continued improvement that suggests their enhanced capabilities actually strengthen with use.
You're saying they get better indefinitely?
We don't know the upper limits yet, Admiral. What we do know is that after 3 years, our most experienced operatives are still showing measurable improvement in range, accuracy, and environmental adaptability. Richardson felt the implications settling over him like a weight. Doctor, what are the long-term effects on the individuals in this program? That's one of the primary monitoring concerns, Harper admitted. We conduct extensive medical and psychological evaluations every 60 days. So far, we've seen no negative health impacts, but we're dealing with capabilities that are still being understood. What about psychological effects, operating at this level of performance, with this kind of responsibility? Colonel Morrison exchanged glances with Dr.
Harper before answering. Admiral, that's actually one of the most significant challenges we face. The individuals in this program are capable of influencing battlefield conditions in ways that give them enormous responsibility. The psychological pressure of knowing that a single shot can determine mission success or failure is something we monitor very carefully.
Captain Chen activated a display showing psychological evaluation data. We've developed support protocols specifically for these operatives. They work with specialized counselors who understand the unique stresses of their capabilities. Richardson studied the data, noting stress indicators and psychological metrics that showed the kind of pressure he would expect from individuals carrying such responsibility. Have there been any psychological casualties? We've had 2 individuals request transfer out of the program, Morrison replied. Both cited the psychological pressure of their responsibilities as the primary factor. They returned to conventional special operations roles without any lasting negative effects. And the others?
The remaining operatives have adapted well to their roles.
In fact, most report a sense of purpose and satisfaction from their unique capabilities. Dr. Harper brought up additional displays showing operational success rates and mission impact data. Admiral, the strategic value of this program has been demonstrated repeatedly. Single operatives can accomplish objectives that would traditionally require team deployments, air support, or complex multi-unit coordination. Richardson reviewed the mission data, seeing engagement results that seemed to defy conventional tactical doctrine. Doctor, what's the strategic vision for this program? Are we talking about expanding it? The expansion question is complex, Harper replied. The rarity of individuals who can develop these capabilities limits our ability to scale the program significantly, but we are exploring applications beyond long-range precision shooting. What other applications? Colonel Morrison took over the briefing at this point. Admiral, the cognitive enhancement techniques we've developed for ballistics applications show potential for other areas requiring rapid spatial reasoning and pattern recognition. We're conducting research into applications for navigation, target identification, and tactical planning. You're talking about creating enhanced soldiers across multiple specialties. Potentially, yes. but each application requires specialized training protocols and careful monitoring to ensure the individuals can handle the cognitive load. Richardson felt the scope of what he was learning expand beyond anything he had imagined when he witnessed Sarah Reeves' impossible shot. How does this program relate to conventional military structure? Are these operatives integrated into existing units? Currently, our operatives work as specialists attached to conventional units as needed, Chen explained.
They maintain their cover as advanced sniper specialists, but their true capabilities are known only to unit commanders with appropriate clearances.
What about enemy intelligence? Is there any indication that hostile forces are aware of these capabilities?
Dr. Harper and Colonel Morrison exchanged a look that made Richardson immediately alert.
Admiral, that's one of our primary security concerns, Morrison said carefully.
We have some indications that certain adversaries have become aware that U.S. forces possess enhanced long-range capabilities. What kind of indications? Changes in tactical behavior, modifications to sniper countermeasures, and intelligence chatter that suggests awareness of capabilities beyond conventional sniper operations. Richardson felt a chill as he realized the implications. Are we talking about arms race scenarios? It's possible, Dr. Harper admitted. If adversary forces develop similar capabilities, it could fundamentally change the nature of asymmetric warfare. Do we have any intelligence on foreign programs with similar objectives? That's classified beyond your current briefing level, Admiral, Morrison replied. But I can tell you that we're not the only nation exploring cognitive enhancement for military applications. Richardson sat quietly for several minutes, processing the magnitude of what he had learned. The program represented advancement in human capability that could revolutionize warfare, but it also carried risks that extended far beyond conventional military considerations. I want to spend more time with Miss Reeves, he said finally. I want to understand her experience in this program and get a first-hand assessment of the psychological and practical implications. That can be arranged, Chen replied. She's been authorized to provide you with detailed operational accounts and training insights. I also want to review the selection criteria and training protocols. If this program is going to expand, we need to ensure we're identifying and developing the right individuals. Dr. Harper nodded. Admiral, I should mention that preliminary assessments suggest you yourself might possess some of the neurological characteristics we look for in candidates. Are you suggesting I could develop these capabilities? Theoretically, yes. Your spatial reasoning scores, pattern recognition abilities, and stress response profiles all fall within our target parameters. The room fell silent as Richardson absorbed this unexpected revelation. The idea of developing the capabilities he had witnessed Sarah Reeves demonstrate was both fascinating and deeply unsettling. 6 weeks after his introduction to the program, Admiral Richardson found himself on a mountainside in Montana, lying prone behind a rifle he had never imagined he would be qualified to operate. The weapon was a custom-built system that represented the absolute peak of ballistic engineering, but the target he was preparing to engage lay 3,400 meters away, across a valley that presented every possible challenge for precision shooting. Sarah Reeves lay beside him, serving as his spotter and instructor, but her role had evolved far beyond traditional training. Through weeks of intensive cognitive conditioning, Richardson had begun to experience the perceptual shifts that defined enhanced operatives, and the process had been both exhilarating and deeply unsettling. Admiral, remember that you're not calculating anything, Reeves said quietly, her voice barely audible even in the thin mountain air. Let your awareness expand to include the entire environment, feel the wind patterns, sense the atmospheric pressure, and allow your perception to encompass the entire trajectory path. Richardson closed his eyes and tried to access the state of expanded awareness that his training had been developing. The conditioning process had involved techniques that seemed to blur the line between military training and meditation, forcing him to confront assumptions about the limits of human perception that he had carried throughout his career. I can feel the wind coming from 3 different directions, he said, surprised by the certainty in his own voice. There's a thermal rising from the valley floor, crosswinds from the ridge line to our left, and a pressure gradient that's affecting the entire trajectory. Good, Reeves replied. Now expand that awareness to include the target area. Don't look at it through the scope. Feel the relationship between your position and the target. Richardson opened his eyes and looked downrange without using his optical equipment. The target was barely visible to naked eye observation, but somehow he could sense its precise location in relation to his shooting position. The sensation was unlike anything he had experienced in conventional training, as if his perception had expanded to encompass spatial relationships that were normally beyond conscious awareness. This is impossible, he murmured. 6 weeks ago you would have been right, Reeves replied, but you're accessing capabilities that have always been present in your neurology. The training hasn't changed your brain structure,
It simply activated dormant processing pathways. Dr. Harper's voice came through their communication system, from the observation post located 500 meters behind their position.
Admiral, your neurological readings are showing the enhanced pattern recognition state we've been working to develop. You're ready to attempt the engagement.
Richardson positioned himself behind the rifle scope and immediately felt the shift in perception that still amazed him after weeks of training. Instead of seeing a magnified image of the target area, his enhanced awareness seemed to create a three-dimensional model of the entire trajectory space.
He could perceive wind currents, atmospheric density variations, and gravitational effects as if they were visible phenomena.
"I can see the bullet path," he said, his voice filled with wonder.
You're not seeing it visually, Reeves corrected. Your brain is creating a predictive model based on sensory input that most people can't access. Trust that perception and make your shot. Richardson settled into his shooting position and allowed his enhanced awareness to guide the minute adjustments needed for the extreme range shot. The process felt completely natural, as if he had been shooting at these distances throughout his career. He could sense the optimal moment when all variables aligned, and he squeezed the trigger without conscious calculation. The shot broke clean, and through his scope Richardson watched the projectile impact precisely where his enhanced perception had predicted. The target dropped immediately, and the satisfaction he felt was unlike anything from conventional shooting achievements.
Confirmed hit at 3,400 meters, came Dr. Harper's voice through the communication system.
Shot placement was within 2 inches of target center. Admiral, you've just achieved a precision shot that 6 weeks ago you would have considered impossible. Richardson remained behind his rifle for several moments, trying to process what he had accomplished. The enhanced perception that had guided his shot was already beginning to fade as he returned to normal consciousness, but the memory of expanded awareness remained vivid.
Miss Reeves, how do you function with this level of capability on a daily basis?
It becomes normal, sir.
The enhanced state feels as natural as regular awareness after months of training. The challenge isn't accessing the capabilities, it's managing the responsibility that comes with them.
Richardson rolled away from his shooting position and sat up, looking across the Montana landscape where his impossible shot had just occurred. The psychological implications are staggering. Operating with capabilities that far exceed normal human limits changes your relationship with everything around you. That's why the psychological support protocols are so important, Reeves replied. Dr. Harper's team has developed techniques for managing the isolation and responsibility that come with enhanced capabilities. Through his earpiece, Richardson heard Dr. Harper's voice providing analysis of his performance. Admiral, your shot demonstrates the successful activation of enhanced spatial reasoning and pattern recognition capabilities.
Your brain processed environmental variables and ballistic calculations at levels comparable to our most experienced operatives. Doctor, what are the long-term implications of developing these capabilities?
Will they continue to strengthen or do they plateau? Based on our experience with other operatives, you can expect continued improvement for at least 2 years. After that, capabilities tend to stabilize at levels that represent significant enhancement over baseline human performance. Richardson stood and began the process of securing his equipment, but his mind was already working through the strategic implications of what he had experienced. Dr. Harper, I need to understand the full scope of current program deployment and future expansion plans. Admiral, that briefing is scheduled for this evening, but I can tell you that your successful development of enhanced capabilities makes you eligible for operational deployment if you choose to pursue that path.
The suggestion caught Richardson by surprise. Throughout his career, he had served in leadership and training roles, but the possibility of returning to direct operational deployment with enhanced capabilities represented a fundamental change in his military service. What would operational deployment involve? Sarah Reeves answered before Dr. Harper could respond. Sir, operatives in this program work individually or in small teams on objectives that require precision capabilities beyond conventional military resources. The psychological pressure is intense, but the strategic impact can be enormous. Richardson thought about the mission footage he had seen during his initial briefing, where single shots had prevented terrorist attacks and eliminated high-value targets under impossible conditions. The responsibility of possessing such capabilities was sobering, but the potential to save lives and accomplish critical objectives was compelling. I want to review operational case studies from all 12 current operatives, Richardson said. I need to understand the full range of missions and success rates before making any decision about active deployment. That information is available, Admiral. Dr. Harper replied. But I should mention that your successful training completion makes you a valuable asset for program expansion and leadership. We're considering you for a role in developing the next generation of enhanced operatives. The idea of training others to develop the capabilities he had just experienced appealed to Richardson's background as an instructor.
but it also raised questions about the ethical implications of deliberately creating enhanced soldiers.
Doctor, what are the ethical considerations surrounding this program? Are we creating individuals whose capabilities fundamentally separate them from normal human experience?
That's one of the ongoing research questions, Dr. Rao,
Harper admitted. We monitor all operatives for signs of psychological separation or superiority complexes. So far, most individuals adapt well to their enhanced capabilities while maintaining normal social and emotional connections. What about the individuals who don't adapt well? We've developed protocols for capability suppression if psychological complications arise, she replied. The enhanced neural pathways can be dampened through specific conditioning techniques, allowing individuals to return to baseline performance levels. Richardson felt a chill at the implications. Are you saying the enhanced capabilities can be turned off? If necessary, yes. But that process is considered a last resort, and it's only been used in cases where psychological stability was at risk. The conversation was interrupted by the sound of approaching helicopters. Looking up, Richardson could see two aircraft approaching from the east, flying in formation with markings that indicated they were carrying personnel with high security clearances. "Admiral," came Captain Chen's voice through the communication system. "We have visitors arriving for an unscheduled briefing. You're requested to return to the observation post immediately." Richardson and Reeves began the process of packing their equipment. But Richardson noticed that Reeves's demeanor had shifted to a state of heightened alertness. "Miss Reeves, is there something I should be concerned about?" "Sir, unscheduled visits to training sites usually indicate either urgent operational requirements or security concerns. Either way, it means something significant has developed." As they made their way back to the observation post, Richardson reflected on how much his understanding of military capabilities and human potential had changed in just 6 weeks. The training had not only developed his own enhanced abilities but had given him insight into a level of human performance that challenged fundamental assumptions about the limits of individual soldier effectiveness. The helicopters had landed by the time they reached the observation post, and Richardson could see uniformed personnel emerging who wore insignia indicating very high levels of authority and security clearance. Dr. Harper was already in conversation with individuals whom Richardson didn't recognize, and their body language suggested the discussion was both urgent and serious. Admiral Richardson called a voice he recognized as belonging to General Patricia Williams, a Joint Chiefs member whom he had worked with on previous classified programs. "We need to brief you immediately on a developing situation that requires your newly acquired capabilities."
Richardson felt the weight of responsibility that Sarah Reeves had described settling over him.
His enhanced capabilities were no longer a training exercise or theoretical development. They were about to be put to operational use in whatever crisis had prompted this unscheduled visit. "General Williams, what kind of situation are we dealing with?" "Admiral, intelligence indicates that a hostile force has acquired enhanced sniper capabilities similar to what you've just developed. 3 of our forward operating bases have been hit by precision shots at ranges that exceed any known enemy equipment capabilities." Richardson exchanged glances with Sarah Reeves, who had gone pale at the general's words. The possibility that enemy forces had developed similar enhancement programs represented a fundamental shift in the strategic balance of modern warfare. "General, are we looking at enemy operatives with cognitive enhancement capabilities? And we need enhanced operatives of our own to counter this threat. Your training completion couldn't have come at a more critical time." Richardson realized that his introduction to enhanced capabilities had been more than just exposure to advanced military technology. He was about to become part of a new kind of warfare, where individual soldiers possessed capabilities that could influence strategic outcomes in ways that conventional military doctrine hadn't anticipated. "General, what are my orders?" "You're being deployed with a team of enhanced operatives to investigate these attacks and neutralize the threat. Your mission begins in 6 hours." As Richardson prepared for his first operational deployment with enhanced capabilities, he understood that everything he had learned about the limits of human performance, the nature of modern warfare, and his own potential had been fundamentally altered. The impossible shot he had witnessed Sarah Reeves make 6 weeks earlier had been only the beginning of a transformation that would change not just his own military service, but potentially the future of individual soldier effectiveness in conflicts around the world. The program that had seemed like advanced training had revealed itself to be preparation for a new kind of warfare, where enhanced human capabilities would determine the outcome of conflicts in ways that traditional military planning had never considered. Richardson was no longer just an observer of these capabilities. He had become one of the enhanced operatives whose impossible shots would shape the future of military operations.